Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Withrow, and I'm the head of exhibitions and publications at the McMichael. You'll have to forgive my voice. I'm just getting over a case of laryngitis. But I will soldier on if you can bear with me. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for a virtual curatorial talk occasioned by our recently opened exhibition, Wanda Koop, Lightworks. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. The McMichael Canadian Art Collection is located on the original lands of the Ojibwe and Anishinaabe people. It is uniquely situated along the Carrying Place Trail, which historically provided an integral connection for Indigenous people between Ontario's Lakeshore and the Lake Simcoe Georgian Bay region. As an institution, McMichael recognizes the importance of acknowledging the original territories of the Ojibwe and Anishinaabe First Nations people and other Indigenous nations. Before we begin tonight's program, I will say three short things. Those of you who have joined us for these talks before will be familiar with these, so I will try to keep them brief. Firstly, this talk is being recorded. Right now, if you're thinking of a friend or a family member who would have loved to have been with us tonight, send them the link and have them join us, or look for a shareable link on our YouTube channel in the coming days. Secondly, we've reserved time at the end for questions for Sarah. So please put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. I'll gather them up and ask as many as I can to Sarah at the time we have at the end. Thirdly, it is my great pleasure to thank the generous supporters of this exhibition and accompanying publication. First of all, our presenting sponsor, BMO, that's Bank of Montreal, whose visionary support has helped us to dream big on so many projects, especially these past few years, and including this one. Our thanks also to Bill and Margaret Fast, Bonnie Hurwitz, Michael Nesbitt, and Norma Cray for their support of Wanda Koop Lightworks. We love to do these talks and to make them free for audiences across Canada and beyond, but we can only do this with the support of our fellow Canadian art lovers. If you're not already in our family of supporters, I hope you might consider joining in. Our members and supporters get access to even more special McMichael content, advance notice of all the things we have going on, and invitations to exclusive occasions. So to become a member or supporter of the McMichael, visit our website and click the box marked join. You can also support the McMichael by visiting us. That's got to be one of the easiest ways to support us. We are open Thursday to Sunday. Tickets are available in advance online or in the moment on site. You can also support us by buying our books. We have been very busy these past 3 years making high quality books that accompany almost all the exhibitions that we do. This one for Wanda Koop is no exception. We're so proud of it. It features 2 essays by great Canadian writers that you'll probably know. There's a haunting and very memorable essay by celebrated Toronto novelist Miriam Toews, as well as a thoughtful and really personal essay by Winnipeg-based Cree activist, writer, film director, Clayton Thomas Muller. And there's an interview between Wanda Koop and our own Sarah Milroy. These two have known each other for a good many years now, so it's a really interesting and fun read. Speaking of Sarah, let me introduce you, Sarah, and finally hand over to you. First, I'll say, though, Wanda is not with us tonight. She is enjoying some well-earned rest and respite in her cabin that is near Riding Mountain National Park, where she enjoys a near total disconnection from the digital world. But we'll talk about why that place is special to her over the course of this hour. Many of you already know Sarah Milroy. She is one of our country's most respected public voices and champions of Canadian art. She's our chief curator and has been our fearless leader at McMichael since 2018. Since then, she has curated or co-curated no less than a dozen, or maybe more now, exhibitions for the McMichael, including Wanda Koop Lightworks, which gathers us tonight, which opened in May. Gathy Falk, Revelations, which is a major retrospective on this living legend of the West Coast, and that show opened in June. Alyssa Piasulatak, My World. This is an exhibition of monumental oil stick drawings from Pangnirtung in Nunavut. That opens this weekend at the McMichael. Sarah also curated Uninvited Canadian Women Artists in the Modern Moment, which was our landmark exhibition that was presented in Kleinberg in Calgary and opened this month at the Vancouver Art Gallery. Sarah keeps herself very busy, but this next hour is just for us. Sarah, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Jen. Yeah, we have definitely, Jen, been very busy. It's funny, like I think in COVID, because we were all working in our pajamas for 2 years, at least I certainly speak for myself, we kind of accelerated instead of slowing down. And now we're still on that same pace. I was saying to a friend of mine at lunch today, except that life is happening and you have to get out of your pajamas now and go out in the world. So
how do
we're
we fit that in?
recalibrating. But yeah, it's been a wonderful couple of years at McMichael, and doing this show with Wanda, you know, is really something that I've been thinking about Wanda's work, you know, for many, many years. We first met each other, I think, in 1983. We found the photograph of it a little while ago, and it was at Olga Korper's gallery back when the world was, actually it was 84. It was the time stamp is November 11, 1984. And I have my hair cut like G.I. Jane, and she looks like a little blonde, you know, hippie girl in her couch and sweater, and we both look frighteningly young, but we've just bonded immediately when we met then. I met her because she was to be the first cover image of the Canadian Art magazine, which we were just reviving from the ashes at that time, and we wanted Wanda to be the first person on our cover. And she was, with a smile, kind of a lot like this one, which was taken recently in her studio in the Henry Street studio in Winnipeg, where she works now when she's not up north at Riding Mountain in the summertime. But Wanda, as many of you will know, I mean, there's so many things to talk about when you talk about Wanda Koop, but she's, of course, a fabulous artist, as we will discuss tonight in detail. She's also just a fabulous Canadian and a fabulous human being, in that she is constantly serving the community around her. I think it comes from her deep Mennonite cultural values of service to others, but many of you who know and love Wanda will know her pioneering sort of stewardship of Art City, which is a project for inner city youth in Winnipeg, many of whom are Indigenous youth who are struggling with difficult situations at home and perhaps don't have the supports they need to, you know, get help with homework, or perhaps, you know, food is scarce, or they certainly don't necessarily have access to art classes. And Wanda has been providing all that and working with the team at Art City and building that space for more than 20 years. So, you know, and it is an extraordinary accomplishment in and of itself, even if she never picked up a paintbrush. So I'm shout out to Art City, because I know Wanda, you know, is not watching because she's out in the woods. But if she was, I think she'd be happy to think people knew about Art City. I think she's rightly proud of it. But you can see here, you know, the working space that she's in. She's finally, after, you know, all of these 40 years of working on her career, you know, achieved a measure of stability and success that, you know, that is commensurate with the enormous amount of work that she's put in over the years and her enormous talent. So I just wanted to show you some snapshots from our friendship, which is a bit incriminating. We were driving through, when she came to Toronto to install her show, we were driving back through Forest Hill on our way back downtown from McMichael, and I knew she would go crazy for this garden. So I drove her past it, and she just like screamed with ecstasy, and we leapt out of the car. And of course, Wanda goes straight onto this person's property and right up to the front door and all around. If she's taking pictures there, that's what she's doing, is, you know, like taking field notes, because color, as we will see tonight, is her drug of choice. She is, and this is something we share. So, you know, she just could not get over the variety of these plants and also their extraordinary colors. And indeed, this is an annual event in Toronto, this house. It's just amazing. And it's there for 10 days and then it's gone. So this is the kind of, you know, constant vigilance that she is on to find source material, to find colors, to find subject matter, to find things that turn on her brain through her eyes. And, you know, like so many people, I think so many artists, you know, struggle in school, for example, and Wanda, like many artists, is quite profoundly dyslexic, which is hugely challenging. But the visual has always been, where she's lived. That's always been, her happy place and her place of mastery. And so, life for her is always about looking. And so she actually showed me this. She was ecstatic to show me this. Actually, it was when she was landing in Toronto. There was a full moon that night, and there were these wonderful lights at the airport. So she took this video and sent it to me, just, amazed at the wonder of, landing at Pearson Airport. So I'm just going to play it for you because this is so Wanda. So everything is a miracle, and everything is unfolding in this way that she finds spectacular and deeply engaging. So here's Wanda, a little bit, before the time that I knew her. She would probably still have been in art school at this time that this picture was made. And you can see already that Wanda was a person who was thinking big, working big. I mean, that was one of the things that drew us to her when we were starting Canadian Art Magazine, was just, a woman artist who was making these enormous, enormous paintings. There was a kind of force behind her production that, could not be denied. And of course, the painting was very powerful and very dynamic, and the color was extraordinary, but so too was the scale and the sense of urgency. And I believe, and, in our publication, Wanda and I talk about it a lot in some depth, and it's not normally something that she talks about a lot, but I believe that part of that force is the sheer, the sheer torrent of her talent, but also the family's backstory. Wanda, is in many ways a typical immigrant story in this country. Her family, I had always heard her described as Russian Mennonite background, but in fact, the history of Wanda's family is that they come from present-day Ukraine. Her family came from around Zaporizhia, which is the town that has the power plant that was almost blown up by the Russians at the beginning of the war in Ukraine. And they were this is her grandparents and great-grandparents. They had been very wealthy Mennonite landowners. The Mennonites were very prosperous people in Ukraine at this time. There had been a sort of exodus of Mennonites from the area that is now Belgium into Ukraine, and they had settled that region to enormous profit and advantage. Of course, when the Soviet Revolution occurred, the Bolsheviks came in and, butchered people in their beds, and her family members were among them. So, I mean, such is the nature of this kind of historical trauma that, she doesn't even, says on the cut line here, murdered relatives, Ukraine. She's not really even able to know precisely who in the family was killed and who were all the people who emigrated. Some, in that diaspora went into Europe, some came to Canada. You have to remember that when these traumatic events would occur, families would shatter, and people would never know of each other again. There was no internet. There's no way to find each other, right? So that reality is hard to imagine if you don't come from that kind of background yourself. But that presence of that trauma in her history, I think, is very present to her, and I think it really drives her work ethic. I think it drives her willful embrace of joy and beauty as well, and her industriousness. So it's a fascinating aspect of her personality and her life and her giving to others. This is the other thing. People are in trouble. You have to help them. It could be you. It could be you. And, maybe even it will be someday. I mean, it's, she's very vigilant on these issues. And in fact, one of the things we talked about in the catalog Q&A was that she has this vestigial kind of anxiety about this. And she has in her basement trunks full of winter coats. And she still, when she's going out in the street, or she always keeps coats in the back of her car. So if she sees people out on the street in Winnipeg, and that's no joke in the winter there, of course, as we all know, she will stop and give coats. She buys them at flea markets and she gathers them, wherever she can. But there's just the sense that if something bad happens, we're going to need coats. And, that's going to be the most important thing first. So it's really interesting to see how this, what you're looking at right now, kind of goes on down through the generations and informs her way of being in the world. And of course, in her studio in Winnipeg, are the remnants of the family portraits of some of these people who were lost in this tide of history. And, one of the things that was very challenging about bringing this exhibition to fruition is that we were talking about all this family history in Ukraine right at the time that Ukraine was undergoing, the onslaught of the Russian invasion. And so it was hugely challenging time. And we talked about that a lot. And to me, that the backdrop of all that makes her accomplishment as an artist even the more, and as a human, even more extraordinary. But, the creative force of this person was just not going to be denied. So these are the kind of works that I knew first. This is 83. So this would have been work she was making at around the time we first met. Huge canvases, usually on plywood, which is very cheap. She had a huge studio on Donald Street in Winnipeg where she would make these things. And very quickly, she, began to be recognized and noticed for the kind of forcefulness of her assertion of herself and her vision. This was the Pool of the Black Star series, which she showed in a kind of landmark installation in the provincial legislature of Manitoba, which some of you might know has a big kind of round hall in the middle of it that has a giant black star in the middle of it. And I believe it's some kind of Masonic symbol that was coded into the architecture of that building when it was built. And of course, it's a massive building in the heart of Winnipeg, when Winnipeg thought it was going to be New York, because it was the link of all the rail lines, and that was going to mean it was the city of the future. And what Wanda did there is kind of recapture that moment of ambition and create this cycle of works. And so more and more people were getting to know about her extraordinary talent. And she was certainly showing in Toronto and in Vancouver, and also increasingly in Europe as the years went by. She did throw a lifeline back to Europe. She showed in Amsterdam. She did a beautiful exhibition at the Venice Biennial, which really delved into her family's history in Ukraine. She made a trip back there and made a number of works and took a bunch of photographs and video going back to the old estates and so on. So she has, maintained a kind of a dialogue with her past all the way through, but then always interpreted into these epically scaled works. And the picture that you see on the left there, Native Fire, is about the people living rough on the banks of the river in downtown Winnipeg. That is the legislature building you see in behind. And indeed, where Wanda lives in the city is very close to the most, toughest part of Winnipeg. She just refuses to move, even though it has become, an increasingly dangerous place to be. But she has a wonderful studio there, which she loves, and she's just sort of goddamned if she's going to be intimidated into going. So she's always putting herself, nose to nose with whatever sort of social issues are happening around her in her world. But, she's made a number of works. This is just one of them that deal with Indigenous land claims, that deal with Indigenous encampments in urban settings, with resistance to pipelines and so on. It is a kind of a leitmotif that goes through her work as a whole. And I should mention too that she has a very vivid memory of a Indigenous woman who had a young child showing up at their family home in Winnipeg when she was just a little girl, and her mother, this woman didn't have anywhere to live, and her mother, this woman just moved in with her family and lived with them for a number of years before they got their feet back underneath them and moved out again. But this was a family in which there was really no money. I mean, the early years of her life she were spent living in what was essentially a garage behind a house on Lulu Island in Vancouver before the family moved to Winnipeg. So, you had to make everything. You had to make all of the beauty. You had to make all the occasions and the special food and like everything from scratch yourself. And, so she continues to, engage with history, to engage with the natural world. Here she was looking, the Green Zone series from 2003 to 7, really looking at the, war in Afghanistan when it happened, like experiencing really the digital environment that we are all marinating in. And again, remembering that Afghanistan, 10 years before this photograph was taken, was the first war that we really experienced vicariously, like we were the eye in the nose of the bomb. We would watch the target approaching on television, and then you'd see the flash of light as the bomb detonated at the target. And that experience of being rendered a voyeur in such violence was deeply moving to her. Of course, her Mennonite beliefs are profoundly pacifist. And so she processed all of that with this incredible suite of paintings, and there are more, of course, like them, as she did her experience of television in general, as she did, her experience of flying in airplanes. She made a wonderful picture in this period of looking down out of the airplane, crossing over the North Pole and seeing icebergs that had cleaved off from the Arctic ice shelf and so on. So thinking about climate change, she's made a number of works about that as well. So there's all sorts of threads really running through the work, but always, as you'll see here in some of these pictures, always this interest in abstraction too, like the orange bar there that turns into the white bar, or the black rectangle that animates that picture sort of in the middle, or the green zip over to the right. She's always reminding us that we're looking at not through a window into the world, but into a made thing that is a series of shapes and forms and compositions that also have an abstract reality to them, that are she's not going for verisimilitude. She's not going for a window into an imaginary world. She is making a flat thing that we experience in whatever way that we want to. But she's always been interested in that language of abstraction, and that goes right back to the beginning of her work. So in 2015, she'd already had a very august body of work behind her, but a major event occurred in her life, which is her mother died. And her mother was an extraordinary woman, profoundly creative person herself, as well as profoundly good person. And actually, as fate would have it, we found out about 6 months before we opened Gathy Falk and Wanda Koop together that Wanda's mother had been kind of not a Sunday school teacher, but had been leading some sort of, they knew each other in the Mennonite community in Winnipeg, those families, and that Wanda's mother had really kind of helped Gathy to kind of get started when she was a little girl. She kind of noticed that she was special and had kind of, cupped her little flame and got her art supplies and kind of given her encouragement. So, the mother was an amazing woman, and God only knows what impact she had on 100 different people as well. But when she died, Wanda, I think it was quite an obliterating loss, and she decided to go to New York. She'd always wanted to spend a season in New York. So she went to New York all by herself, and she ended up staying in a kind of cheap hotel that ended up being better for her than the Airbnb that she'd originally wanted. And she spent a lot of time just like walking the streets, but also looking out the window of her hotel room at the way the light played in the kind of canyons of Manhattan and at the different times of day, and playing, making notes, really opening herself to that experience. And of course, being in New York City, seeing all the work that one sees, having that incredible liberating feeling of anonymity that one has in that city was an enormous creative on switch for her. And she started making these works called In Absentia, which, I really see the absent element here is her mother, but I've never actually asked her why she called the series In Absentia. But there's also a kind of ghostly sense of vacancy in these pictures as well. I mean, they're devoid of explicit human presence, and that there's an absence there as well. But they're very quiet, very beautiful works. And I'll just show you one of them in detail to just see, we're starting to see this kind of very minimalist treatment of gradations of color and light, and they're very formal. You could look at this and not even know that it was a city painting. It's coming so close to abstraction. So with this show, she had a show at Night Gallery in Los Angeles, which was by then showing her, and also at Arsenal with Division Gallery in Toronto or Montreal, one or the other, or both, I can't remember, of these in absentia paintings, and they sold really well. And she made a sudden packet of capital that she then was able to figure out, okay, now with this, I'm feeling, I've had my show at the National Gallery of Canada. I've had 2 very successful shows, you know, commercial shows. She was also shown in a museum exhibition in Texas, which had been a big, you know, also a big step for her. What do I need now in my life? And what we started to see after the In Absentia series were this series of landscapes that had these abstract elements in them, like this dripping orange pigment, which to me kind of feels a bit like the natural world was some kind of, I mean, it's too beautiful to look like a toxic stain, really, but it is definitely seems to be of a man-made sort of a thing rather than a natural sort of thing. Excuse me for one sec. And it's kind of interrupting this very dreamy natural world that she's creating there. And what we find when we, you know, when I started asking questions, is it was happening is that she was starting to spend more and more time in a place that she'd been going to since back in 2007, which is this area near Riding Mountain National Park, which is about, I think it's about 4 hours north of Winnipeg, north and west, if I've got that right. And she'd been having these, she first went into that region on a residency, and then her partner that she got together with, Steve, had a little piece of land up in the bush near, not on water, just up in the woods near Riding Mountain. And they spent several years just camping there, basically in this little shack. And they'd go for, you know, back and forth for a couple of months every summer. And then, you know, as time went by, they committed more and more time to it. And then, you know, as she was able to sell all those paintings of the city, ironically, she was able to afford with him to, and he's a builder, so it was fantastic to create this space for themselves at Riding Mountain. And half the building is a painting studio to accommodate her large works. And she goes there now about 3 months of the year, sometimes 4, and just works completely undisturbed. And this quality that I was seeing in the paintings after the In Absentia works, I kind of felt like something had shifted, and I started to think about the landscape legacies of the McMichael. And right now you see the Wanda Koop show as you walk through the Group of 7 installation downstairs, and you get to Wanda Koop. There's that kind of continuum of this tradition of landscape painting, and I thought, you know, this would be a good period in which to kind of catch up with Wanda, because there really is always an engagement with the contemporary world with Wanda, but there was a new kind of zen in the work that I was feeling that really came out of this very specific experience of a place. So, you know, these are Wanda's pictures, by the way, which are her constant field notes. She's always taking pictures and also always working in notebooks. And, you know, you look at these and you can really see what her interests are in, you know, in light. I mean, this is an incredible picture, you know, in reflections. And of course, she's fascinated by creatures of all kinds. I mean, she's mad about dogs. She has way too many dogs. I keep telling her she has to restrain herself, but it seems like there's a new one there every 6 months. Most of them strays. This beaver dam here, you know, I know would have been something that she would have gone to check out on a regular basis. So when she goes there, and there's bears, and there's cougars, and there's beavers, and there's all sorts of things that I've got to tell you would terrify me. But she just has a kind of a trust of it that I find remarkable. And, you know, here's one of her pictures of the clouds during a sunset reflected in water that she took. And these are colors that you'll see when I show you the paintings that come, that really bloom on the canvases. She studies those colors and she captures those colors, and, you know, fascinated by those gradations of light that you see in these pictures that she's taking here, even when they're very, very subtle. So this is, you know, this is a very particular type of day in Manitoba in the summertime. And you know, a work like Unseen Scene, you know, the Silver River, which is a very large work, and there's 2 very large sort of near total abstractions. You can kind of see that you sense that you're dealing with landscape, that this is some kind of watery reflection. But, you know, it's very, very subtle that it relates to something explicitly representational. And what you see when you stand in front of this yourself is just, your eyes have to kind of almost adjust to it, and then they just kind of like open. You know, they just open if you spend the time with them, and you can read the kind of waves of the color that is underneath, layer, under layer, under layer. They're just amazing contemplative works. And so I just sort of cannot recommend enough just coming up. I mean, we've all been through very challenging times over the last 2.5 years. The pleasure of just standing in front of this enormous painting and letting it do its work on you is, you know, we're just so happy to be able to offer this to people this summer. And I know Wanda feels the same. I was sending her a picture yesterday, actually, of an absolutely adorable group of school children that were sitting underneath one of these paintings and talking about it. And some of them were sitting up and some of them were lying back, and kind of, you could see they were just kind of going into it. And I sent her the picture, and, you know, she did text me back, you know, this is amazing to see. So it's a real gift from her. And there's, you know, there's many different moods that she really strikes, you know, in her work. And this was the Road to Nowhere is a small, you know, it's probably this big. So it's not tiny, but it's, you know, it's like this. And it's just this very subtle arrangement of grays and mauves, with the two tiny headlights indicated and the two tiny tail lights. So these cars have passed each other in this kind of miasma of gray. And this was the picture, interestingly enough, that Miriam Taves chose to write about in the catalog. And she ended up responding to this picture by talking about a very frightening experience that she had in a car during a foggy road trip with a friend, in which, you know, she was very lucky to survive it. But, you know, she has long been an admirer of Wanda. They're both, of course, from Mennonite families. Miriam's family experience that she's written about so profusely in her novels is, you know, based in Winnipeg as well, and in Mennonite families. And really all the kind of, you know, restraint that is expected of Mennonite women to, you know, serve and to self-efface and so on. And, you know, not so easy to be Wanda Koop or Miriam Taves in families like that. And, you know, they've both made their way. So they're now thick as thieves, and we're glad to have played a role in getting them together. So to, you know, Clayton Thomas Muller, we reached out to Clayton because I was reading his fantastic memoir about living in the city of dirty water, his memoir of growing up Indigenous in Winnipeg. But originally he was from northern Manitoba, from a reserve way up at the border. And he was like, oh, Wanda Koop, like, that's so great, because, you know, we used to, when we lived in Ottawa, we used to always take our boys to the National Gallery, and Wanda Koop was their favorite painter. And then my son won an art prize because he was able to make a painting responding to Wanda Koop, and he got the first prize, and he was so proud. So, you know, what's nice is when you reach out with an assignment for a book and you realize that that person is already there, and that, you know, that there was this like meant to be quality in the book. And we love it when that happens. So you can see, I mean, this is, you know, you could see that this is the world as we know it. It's just very, very abstracted, obviously. But then there's a whole gorgeous suite of paintings in the show that are really just kind of light and air studies. They are, it's of course impossible to do them justice in a slide on a Zoom talk, but they have these zips of color down the side that kind of vaporize at a certain point. But, you know, definitely there is this feeling of breathing in the color and, you know, exhaling peace when you stand in front of these. And there are a number of them of different kinds. This one feels very much like water, but then could be air, twilight. You know, when you're not in any specific place, but you are in a very specific mood. And so this is one of the things, you know, about Wanda is, you know, that just needs to be underscored again, is just her extraordinary grasp of color and what color does to you. And I mean, and we were looking at the picture of the cover of our Wanda Koop book, and, you know, you'll see that there's the blue cover with the sort of electric orange type on it that says Wanda Koop. And we had to print actually a fifth color to get a Wanda worthy orange. It doesn't exist. You know, you have to kind of super print it to get it there. And you know, Wanda loves those kinds of colors. She loves, you know, day glow and you know, this just, you know, emergency orange and so on. But she also is such a master of the most subtle colors to be found in nature. But, you know, as we know, sometimes nature's colors aren't so subtle. You do have these moments where you will see a sky like this. And, you know, this is a work that, you know, is from a little earlier, Standing with Standing, which is a series that she made in response to the pipeline controversies and the resistance of indigenous people in the northern US to the pipeline that was going down through their territories to Florida. So Standing Rock, she was standing with them. And, you know, like a number of works, as I mentioned, that she's made in solidarity. This work, Scandinavia Summer, you know, I was looking at this today for a first time in a while. And, you know, it's always, we've always sort of described it or thought of it as this kind of, you know, digital, it looks like a sort of corrupted digital image. And indeed it does. Also is kind of psychedelic in a funny way, but it occurred to me today that it also looks like oil slick on water. Like it's the way that you get those rainbow patterns when there's some toxic crap on the surface of a lake. You know, if someone's boat is leaking, you get that sort of scum on the surface that is actually often incredibly beautiful sort of peacock tail colors, but you know that it does not bode well for the health of that body of water. So I wonder if that isn't part of what she's, I'll have to ask her when she comes back down out of the bush. So there's a whole series of other works that are in our show at McMichael, and we have them installed in a gallery that looks out into the forest, but that are these very large, I mean, these are substantial pictures that are, I don't know, what do you think, like 7 feet high, 6-7 feet high, as I recall them. And they are abstractions from nature, and they vary from the one at left, which kind of looks like some computer cabling or something, or maybe part of the respiratory system or nerves, you know, in the body or in the brain. On the right, edging more towards a conventional tree picture. And I sort of asked her, you know, where did you, you know, get this idea that trees kind of, you know, look like sort of like pipes, like it's unclear if these are synthetic objects or if they certainly refer to trees, but they look more synthetic. And then she showed me this photograph. She's like, I don't make this stuff up. Like, this is, here's one of the source images. Like, trees do have this kind of startling, vivid, you know, way of standing out from what's all around them, and a kind of, you know, a kind of idiosyncratic, you know, personal quality to them, that they are very planar and sort of volumetric and very, very, you know, simplified forms that are very sleek and they don't have a lot of, you know, bumpy bits to them. And so, I mean, I thought that was, you know, really funny to see, to look at it through her eyes. But this is, you know, they are intentionally ambiguous as to whether or not they are trees, or are they mechanical, or are they parts of the body. They're about bodily systems, about physical systems in the universe. And that is very much what she is wanting to immerse herself in when she goes out into nature. And I just, I think it's wonderful to have these works, you know, at the McMichael, where of course she has lots of great roommates, like, and I just want to pull up one, Lauren Harris, you know, another artist who really, really strived for that kind of very extremely reduced, minimal treatment of tree forms. And, you know, it's like Wanda says, you know, that trees are like the bones of, you know, the bones of the forest. Like the forest has died, but the bones still stand, and they stand for the longest time. And I know this is an idea that obviously captivated Harris as well. He makes the lone tree remains of the tree trunk a subject in so many of his paintings. So, I mean, who knows, maybe she's channeling her inner Lauren Harris, but, you know, or he was thinking into the future about her. But this is one of the works in the McMichael collection, and it's one of our real treasures. So, you know, again, like Harris's painting, this is, you know, that very, very minimal, elegant form in nature. And then, okay, so we knew we were going to do a show at the McMichael, and we've been talking, and I'd made a trip, I think just before COVID. And then I made another trip about 2/3 of the way through it, where we were really getting serious about it. And we're starting to pull things out and build walls in our imagination and figure out where things were going to go and so on. But she had these light sticks, and this is in her studio. She had these light sticks propped up against the wall. And I asked her about them, and they were like things that she was just kind of doing to stop herself from going nuts in captivity during COVID. And each little light stick, they're different sizes and widths. And she just asked Steve to cut a bunch of, she said, cut me some sticks. He's like, well, what do you want? She said, well, I don't know, long, short, wide, skinny, fat, thin, like, I don't know, sticks. So Steve went off and went to the lumber store and, rummaged around and brought her back sticks. And she started painting them. And then she started making series with them and like playing with them like piano exercises, visually for her. She would arrange them this way, and then she'd arrange them that way, and then she'd make some more, and then she'd change the order, and then, it would go like this. And so, I don't think she had, from what I understand, she didn't have any intention to show them. They were just for her. They were just fun, but I just thought they were fantastic. So I'm very happy to say that I was able to talk her into allowing us to exhibit them at the McMichael. And we showed them just the way she did, propped on a shelf like that. And we had to take every single light bulb in the McMichael. We had to steal a few from the group of 7, sorry lads, in order to get enough light on these light sticks to really make them vibrate. And, this room is just so great. When you go in there, it depends how susceptible you are to color. But if you love color, you will truly love this room, because, and what we did was just placed one work in that room, this gorgeous picture, which I showed you earlier, which is one of her earliest pictures of that area of Manitoba that we've been talking about. We put that in relationship to the light sticks, just to show that, just to have people think about the fact that, these colors that I'm showing you here in the light sticks are indeed colors that are found in nature. I mean, the world is that full of wonders. You can find these colors in the natural world. You just don't see them all at once usually. But, here we're getting the major chromatic overload. But this is one long work. These are not individual works. This is one installation piece, which she assembled. She had them in order when she shipped them to us. And then when she got this piece to us, she then reworked with it again. And you'll see that, when you experience this piece in the flesh, you'll see that some of these elements have a yellow shadow behind them, because the back of them is painted with a kind of fluorescent yellow that then picks up the light and bounces against the wall. Or you'll see other ones that have, not all of them, you have to kind of hunt and search for them, but, other ones that have a little puff of color on the wall above them where the light is bouncing off the top of the stick. You don't see it as a viewer coming into the room. The only way you know it's there is that you can see a little puff of color that's kind of lifting off the top. So they are really making people happy. People come around the corner and they see this room, they really become euphoric. And I think that's exactly what she wanted to do. So I'm so grateful that, she let us show these, because I think they're wonderful experiments. And, Wanda turned 70 this year. This is her first, foray into sculpture, really. And, who knows what she's going to do with this new direction, but I'm just, I love the fact that she's just always pushing the edge and always, trying new things and always amazing us all. And sometimes I think even herself, although she's a very modest person. So, I think that certainly brings me through the pictures that we have on view at the McMichael. And as I said, they represent the last 5 years or so of her work. There is a vast body of work behind that, but we wanted to do something that was very specific moment in time. And so we just really dwelt on the work that has been made following in absentia, as she's moved into this different kind of relationship to the natural world, or just maybe even it's getting older, thinking about things differently, wanting that immersion in light and color and space that we feel in these works. But they're just so ravishingly beautiful. And we just really hope that all of you will come and spend some time up there. It's medicine in there. And of course, we have Kathy Falk on right now at the McMichael as well, which is also, you know, a radiant artist when it comes to using color. And Elizabeth Shulatak, you know, the Inuit artist from Pangnertung, whose show we're putting up today, and it'll be open on Saturday. So it's all about color at the McMichael this summer and fall. And we really look forward to having you all with us and being able to, you know, just have a moment, you know, at the McMichael to kind of, you know, be out in the natural world, come inside and discover many wonders, and just let us be a place that helps right now. So anyway, that's probably all I have to say. There's Wanda in nature when she was even more young and foolish than she is now. She was never foolish, actually. She was always wise. I love this picture of her, though. You just get the feeling that she's just concentrating, and it's like the whole world could blow up around her and she wouldn't even notice it. So
Sarah, I noticed you didn't put the photo of Wanda on a motorcycle in this presentation.
I didn't, but she did have her badass days around this time. Actually, she had a motorcycle. I think she had the usual nonsense that goes on with beautiful young women in art school, with teachers chasing around after her and nobody giving her, you know, respect. And, you know, she sort of had to fight to maintain her, you know, wojo, as we say, at the McMichael, as opposed to mojo, but she certainly did. And, you know, she got a motorcycle at one point, I think, just to kind of, you know, strengthen that part of herself. And it was this huge bloody great thing that she could barely pick up when it fell over. But she rode it for a while. And, you know, as I say, she rode a big motorcycle, she painted big paintings, she had big ambitions, and she made it happen. So God bless her.
You'll have to pick up, for everyone listening, you'll have to come to the McMichael and pick up a copy of the book to see this photo of Wanda on motorcycle.
It's really good. Actually, I should have put it in. I forgot.
What you did not put in the book or this presentation is the photo of when you first met in the 80s.
Oh God. It's pretty funny.
Someday.
But I don't know what happened to that picture.
Yeah, you must have gotten lost. Can you tell us, Sarah, you and Wanda have known each other for many years, and Wanda has, you know, had an active career for many decades now, and has gone through various, you know, she's worked in many different modes of representation. What do you think will be, you know, 100 years from now, looking back on Wanda's career, what do you think her most lasting impression, what do you think the most lasting impression she will have made?
Yeah, I mean, I think she'll always be seen as a consummate, you know, not master, but mistress of the kind of technical side of painting, the kind of being able to wrest from the medium, you know, everything it can give you in terms of atmosphere, color, and light. Like her grasp of how to create those experiences for the viewer on the canvas surface are really, you know, kind of without parallel. When you look at Canadian painting, she's sort of on her own there. And a deep commitment, of course, to that medium. I think it's also a record of a life of just how looking and loving to look can really redeem a life, like just the sheer pleasure of the visual. I mean, she has a wonderful story that she tells about being a child, and there was a cemetery somewhere near their house, and there was a man who had a donkey who used to go around. It's a very poignant story. He used to go around collecting the plastic flowers from the graves when they were, or collecting the flowers from the graves when they were rotting or whatever. And sometimes they were plastic flowers, but Wanda would sort of sneak along behind and you know, catch the flowers that were falling off the wheelbarrow and take them home and save them and look at them. So, you know, it was just like this idea of, you know, being determined to really revel in, to have looking at the world, seeing the world and the beauty of the world be a life, you know. And I suppose in a way all artists do that, but you can really see that so clearly articulated in Wanda's work.
In terms of the impact she's made on a next generation of artists in Winnipeg.
She's an unbelievable mentor too.
And beyond.
God only knows how many young people that have gone through Art City that are changed forever by what she's created there too. Yeah.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for giving us that your insights into this exhibition. Many of you on in the audience with us may have seen the exhibition. If you haven't seen it yet, this will be, I hope, has whet your appetite to come and see us at McMichael Thursday to Sunday. This show is on through the summer and into the fall. I think we close in the middle of November, so there's plenty of time. November 20th. So lots of time to come and see this exhibition and the other wonderful shows we have on. I'd like to say also that if you'd like to make a date with us next Tuesday, Sarah and I will be here on Zoom with Jen Aitken, who is a Toronto-based emerging sculptor who has been doing a residency with us at McMichael over the last month. So she's going to be talking about her work with Sarah. And then the Tuesday after that, make a date with us again to talk about Gathy Falk, which is a major retrospective that we opened was it two weeks ago? That will be on through the summer. So a Zoom talk the 2 Tuesdays coming. Please join us. We'll look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, Sarah, so much as always.
Great pleasure.
And thank you everyone for joining us. Please join us again next time. Thanks very much. Bye for now.
See you all soon.